mad interesting to me. I was about to go to sleep and this just woke me up.
Was only a couple years older than me. One day in her office, she frustratedly began recounting a conversation she had with a more liberal family member. She had discovered a totally new concept in that conversation, or at least one that was totally new to her. It was very troubling. Stressed and defeated, she looked up from her desk where her eyes had thus far been locked and over at me. She asked, "Have you ever heard that there are other books that didn't make it into the Bible?" Yeah, non-canonical gospels and all that, I tried to say as gently as possible. See, I had just become an atheist hardly a month prior, and I knew that if anyone at work doubted my Christianity, I'd be fired immediately. I almost was fired for believing in evolution, actually. I couldn't take the chance of coming off skeptical of the Bible as she knew it. My boss replied, "No one ever told me about those. Did anyone ever teach you about them?" "No," I honestly answered. "Then how did you find out about them?" she asked. "I just read about them online," I admitted, not willing to give up too much information. She leaned back in her chair and threw up her hands and said, "Why wouldn't anyone teach us about this crap as kids? I'm not even going to look it up. I don't want to know anything about that. I just want to live my life and love Jesus and not be worried about all of that."
Pause. Y'all cover were y'all taking this in? Kind of talks kind of fast. He had a job at like a Christian. It was at a church, and he had become an atheist, but he knew that his beliefs would make him lose his job, so he kept it under wraps. So, but what's really interesting right here is the part that the woman, when she said, I don't want to think about this stuff. I just want to love Jesus and not be worried about all of that. I just want to believe. Like, let me take it back a little bit.
About this crap as kids. I'm not even going to look it up. I don't want to know anything about that. I just want to live my life and love Jesus and not be worried about all of that.
So she found out that there was missing books out of the Bible, and her reaction was, why didn't they teach us about this as kids? I don't really want to know about it at this point. I just want to love Jesus and not be worried about all that stuff. So I don't want to think about it. I just want to love Jesus. Don't get in the way of me loving Jesus.
I knew exactly how she felt. I had felt the same fear for months before leaving the faith. Sitting in her office at that moment, I understood that she was at a crossroads I had encountered months before, except where she had chosen to simply believe, I had decided to learn instead.
So, and that line right there is heavy. Like where she chose to just simply believe, I chose to, I decided to learn instead. A lot of the stuff, whenever they say blasphemy and stuff like that, it drives you away from further knowledge, from learning more stuff, because you're like, oh, that's blasphemy, so I can't learn about that stuff or whatever. So, but does God really want you to be like that? Does God really want you to not know things? Like, the more you know, the more you're able to protect yourself, right? The more you're able to defend yourself, the more you're able to be fruitful, the more you're able to protect your family and build things,
Yeah.
Let me play.
For those of you who have made that choice alongside me, I'm glad that you're here. Now that I don't limit myself in what I can learn about, I find a lot of happiness in learning about the things that I missed out on growing up. Think evolution or non-canonical gospels. It's almost like I'm gaining secret knowledge that allows me to transcend into something more.
Pause. and it's not secret knowledge really, but it is to you if you are stuck in the mindset of whatever religion that's keeping you from. Now it's secret knowledge, and he says it allows me to transcend into something more. Let me read the comments. How many of them were actually told to be to the public? Like how many of them slave revolts that were successful were told to the public? That's a good question. But I don't know. I think we'd see evidence of that though. And Pat says that's most people. Probably the comment about the lady, like I choose not to I'd rather just believe. I don't want to know. And Pat says, the truth messes up the story for them. Yeah. Oh, thorn in my eye, the truth. You just, you just a, a rock in my shoe. I misuse like I misses a rocks in my shoe.
More on that later. So since a lot of us, myself included, are so cooped up at home that we're missing haircuts and having to change our hairstyles to compensate, I thought that it would be fun to try to spread some joy and some religious literacy by telling you all the story of perhaps the wildest gospel not included in the Bible, the Gospel of Judas. A bit of preliminary information: the Bible is a collection of multiple different books written by multiple different authors across well over a millennium. That said, the books that make up what we now recognize as the Bible are called canonical, as they make up the biblical canon. Today, some different sects of Christianity have slightly different biblical canons from others, but the vast majority of books that exist within one contemporary version of the canon exist in all others. This hasn't always been the case, though. There are a lot of books in the Christian mythos that were never accepted into the biblical canon. The Gospel of Judas is one of them. Our story begins as far back as 180 CE with a Christian church father named Irenaeus. In his work, which translates to Against Heresies, he wrote about a Christian sect who believed that the disciple Judas betrayed Jesus because he had secret knowledge about him. Irenaeus said that those in this sect produce a fictitious history of this kind, which they call the Gospel of Judas. Yeah, calling it fictitious outright seems a little odd by today's standards. Maybe it's a little harsh, but something we have to remember is that the scholarship of that day was very different. Irenaeus was a heresiologist, and the very title of his field lived a dedication to orthodoxy, an indication that it was not the study of what theology existed, but a study of theology presumed to be wrong in light of the one true theology, Irenaeus' own. Unfortunately, for centuries, writings like this were all we had on the Gospel of Judas. At some point several centuries back, the book itself was lost. Lucky for us, though, it was found again in the 1970s. Back then, treasure hunters found several.
Hold on, pause. It's hard to accept the fact that so many people that you trusted actually lied to you. I think that's that cognitive dissonance that makes it so hard. He's kind of fumbling around a bit. I'm gonna let it play though.
Ancient-looking documents in a cave in Egypt, including the codex which contained the Gospel of Judas. In my opinion, they did miss a serious opportunity by not pulling a Joseph Smith and just starting a whole new religion by claiming to be able to translate the documents with a magic rock and a hat. But instead, they decided to sell their loot to an antiquities dealer in Cairo, Egypt. The dealer, Hana Osable, put the text up for sale for $3 million, but never found a buyer. So in 1984, he decided to store the ancient, delicate texts in a safety deposit box in Long Island, New York. They stayed there for 16 years, disintegrating in the humidity of the area. 10 to 15% of the manuscript we'll cover here was actually destroyed in this time, unfortunately. In 2000, Frida Nussberger Chacos, another antiquities dealer, bought the texts and got them to manuscript conservators who could actually preserve them, luckily. Finally, in 2006, National Geographic published a translation and pictures of the rediscovered Gospel of Judas. It was translated from the ancient Egyptian language of Sahidic Coptic and dated to the 3rd or 4th century. This means that if it's the same gospel which Irenaeus spoke of, the version that we have is probably a 3rd or 4th century copy of a text from the 2nd century. Given all that context, it's obvious that it was not written by the long-dead Judas. Now, I know what you're probably thinking at this point. That's cool, Drew, but what does it actually say? I hear you, so I'm going to read through portions of the text which I'd like to focus on.
Fucking finally.
It's about to get pretty weird. One day he, Jesus, was with his disciples in Judea. He found them sitting together practicing their piety. When he came up to his disciples sitting together praying over the bread, he laughed. The disciples said to him, "Master, why are you laughing at our prayer? What have we done? This is what's right." He answered and said to them, "I'm not laughing at you. You're not doing this because you want to, but because through this, your God will be praised." They said, "Master, you are the Son of our God." Jesus said to them, How do you know me? Truly, I say to you, no generation of the people among you will know me. That's
None of the generation of the people among you will will know me. And these people who were supposed to be his disciples, or maybe they thought they were. I think they were confused. And that's another thing going back to the confusion and the comments that the person made earlier about confusion. Here it rears its ugly head again. That, like I say, that rock in the shoe. But he's going to talk about it.
pretty strange if you've ever read the canonical Gospels. Apparently, this Jesus thinks that not even his own disciples know who he truly is. Also, what's up with him saying "your God" to his disciples as if they're worshiping something other than him or his heavenly Father? When his disciples heard this,
Pause. Man, and I got to be really careful about this because a lot of people can't, like, this is really hard. But, what? There's a passage in the Bible that a lot of people would remember, and it goes something like, he will lead his people astray. He will lead God's people astray, and he will have them worship him, you know, instead of God, and he will give them all their treasures that they could ever want. And he said, I will make these people turn their back on you and worship me. So that's in there. And I know a lot of people will remember that. But it's funny because if you could just flip that and hear it for what it really is and think about the world that we live in today and how many people are led astray, then that would make sense. Like, I'm trying to be careful on how I say this. I'm trying not to be offensive.
they started to get angry and furious and started to curse him in their hearts. But when Jesus noticed their ignorance, he said to them, "Why are you letting your anger trouble you? Has your God within you and his stars become angry with your souls? If any of you is strong enough among humans to bring out the perfect humanity, stand up and face me." All of
I think that part is a part important too, because he said, if any of you is strong enough to bring out the perfect humanity, stand up and face me. So none of them could. And that's because of our, our embracing of the ego, our greed, our lust, all of these things that we do that keep us from being our natural human self. You know, we're supposed to be giving and loving. Anything that's away from that is not us.
them said, "We're strong enough," but their spirits weren't brave enough to stand before him, except Judas Iscariot. He was able to stand before him, but he couldn't look him in the eye, so he looked away. Judas said to him, "I know who you are and where you've come from. You've come from the immortal realm of Barbelo, and I'm not worthy to utter the name of the one who sent you." I told you this got really weird. It's apparent the narrative here is totally different from anything in the canonical Gospels. First of all, the disciples are painted very negatively. They might not even be worshiping Jesus at all, but some other god. Judas is apparently the only one of them who actually knows who Jesus is and who sent him to earth. Secondly, with that realm of Barbelo comment, I think it's safe to say that this gospel's understanding of the structure of the cosmos is pretty different from that of the canonical gospels. We'll pick the story back up.
Okay. So what do y'all think? Comments. Um, did I read this already? Yeah. He says, your God within you is very important. Yes. Yes. Key lines in here is what you have to grab a hold to. That's why I'm so glad that he put the scriptures up there as he was reading them, because it really helps a lot. Because you want to pick these apart yourself. I mean, he picking them apart, but he's not going to grab on everything. Doesn't reach out to everyone. Some things are not for everyone. So the thing that reaches out and grabs your heart, grabs your soul, that thing is for you. You know what I'm saying? So it'll be a line in there that'll grab you. So it's like your God within you. So, like, it's really you. You know what I'm saying? It's really just you. So you worshiping this, man. I want to be careful. Let me play some more.
days later in the narrative. Because there's a lot of extra details here and a few places where the text was damaged enough to lose a few words, I'm going to editorialize just a bit for clarity. Another day, Jesus came up to them. They said to him, "Master, we've seen you in a dream because we had great dreams last night." And they said, "We saw a great house with a great altar in it, and 12 people, we'd say they were priests, and a name. And a crowd of people was waiting at the altar until the priests finished receiving the offerings. We kept waiting too." Jesus said, "What were they like?" And they said, "Some fast for 2 weeks. Others sacrifice their own children, others their wives, praising and humbling themselves among each other. Others sleep with men, others murder, yet others commit many sins and do criminal things. And the people standing before the altar invoke your name, and in all their sacrificing, they fill the altar with their offerings." When they said this, they fell silent because they were troubled. Jesus said to them, "You are the ones receiving the offerings on the altar you've seen. That's the God you serve, and you're the 12 people you've seen. And the animals you saw brought in to be sacrificed are the crowd you lead astray. It's been said to the human generations, 'Look, God has accepted your sacrifice from the hands of priests.' That is the minister of error. But the Lord who commands is the Lord over everything. On the last day, they will be found guilty."
Man, those lines are heavy if y'all can hear them. And then there's 12. So it's like really all of humanity is what they're saying. All of the zodiac, okay? All of y'all are following this wrong thing that you think is not. And then you're really worshiping yourselves. He said the stuff that you are giving to the altar is stuff that's coming to you. You are those wicked people. You are the ones doing this stuff. Let me play that back.
That's the God you serve, and you're the 12 sacrificing. They sacrifice their own children, others their wives. People was waiting at the altar until the because we had great dreams last night. And they said, "We saw a great house with a great altar in it, and 12 people, we'd
Great house. That's like the world, okay? Like the earth.
say they were."
Or you can even say like a house within the zodiac, like a astronomical time frame, like the solar cycle.
Priests and a name. And a crowd of people was waiting at the altar until the priests finished receiving the offerings. We kept waiting too. Jesus said, "What were they like?" And they said, "Some fast for 2 weeks. Others sacrifice their own children, others their wives, praising and humbling themselves among each other."
Basically, it's like, okay, you have religious people in here too, because it says, and they some fast for 2 weeks. You know, these are religious people. And then it says, others sacrifice their own children, others their wives, praising and humbling themselves among each other. So it's basically like, pleasing your ego.
Others sleep with men, others murder, yet others commit many sins and do criminal things. And the people standing before the altar invoke your name, and in
In Jesus' name.
all their sacrificing, they fill the altar with their offerings. When they said this, they fell silent because they were troubled. Jesus said to them, "You are the ones receiving the offerings on the altar you've seen. That's the God you serve, and you're the 12 people you've seen. And the animals you saw brought in to be sacrificed are the crowd you lead astray."
And the animals you saw brought in to be sacrificed are the crowd you lead astray. These are real people that you are leading into the fire to be sacrificed.
It's been said to the human generations, "Look, God has accepted your sacrifice from the hands of priests." That is the minister of error. But the Lord who commands is the Lord over everything. On the last day, they will be found guilty. All right, that's a pretty graphic image. Jesus says that the disciples will lead people astray in his name and will be unknowingly serving a different God, one that delights in degeneracy and violence. It sounds like Jesus is even saying that ritual sacrifice isn't right and that those who have been relying on that for communion with God or salvation will be punished for it. Next up, Judas also has a vision. Judas said, "Master, just as you've listened to all of them, now listen to me too, because I've seen a great vision." But Jesus laughed when he heard this. He said to him, "Why are you all worked up, you 13th demon? But speak up, and I'll bear with you." Okay, what in the world does 13th
Fucking 13th demon, bro. Hold on. That part got me. Let me play this
in a
again.
great vision? But Jesus laughed when he heard this. He said to him, "Why are you all worked up, you 13th demon? But speak up, and I'll bear with you."
Why are you all worked up, you 13th demon? 13th demon. So then they kept on saying 12, and they were like 12 disciples. And then it's like this is the one that would he stood up to Jesus, but he couldn't look Jesus in the eye. He couldn't look Jesus in the eye. Like the son of God, he couldn't look in the eye, and he's the 13th demon. So he's outside of the 12? Is he outside of the system?
Okay, what in the world does 13th demon mean? And why would he call Judas that? Well, when we get to the part where they discuss cosmology, pay close attention. It'll all be explained by the end. Judas said to him, "In the vision I saw myself. The 12 disciples are stoning me and chasing me rapidly. And I also came to the place where I had followed you. I saw a house in this place, and my eyes couldn't measure its size. Great people surrounded it, and that house had a roof of greenery. In the middle of the house was a crowd. Master, take me in with these people." Jesus answered and said, "Your star has led you astray, Judas, and that no person of mortal birth is worthy to enter the house you've seen, because that place is reserved for those who are holy."
Mm, that means not you, buddy. You don't get to come into
Well,
that house.
well,
That's for the holy
well look.
ones. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, if you really, all right, look, because hopefully I can get this out. But all right, there was, they always speak of the 12 disciples, which are the 12 houses of the zodiac. So, but one thing that most people don't realize is that there's actually 13 moon cycles within the year. So it's kind of hidden. So you know what I'm saying? Like it's there, but it's not. So, but I think there's actually supposed to be a 13th with like the within the 13 cycles, like there's a planet, or there's something that only can be seen during certain periods. So that's why it's not a part of the regularly seen or talked about 12.
Okay.
So it's, yeah. But I mean, it's a bunch of symbolism. Like, I mean, anybody that gets caught up in the literalism of the Bible is gonna be mistaken, because like just the writing style that the Bible was written in so many decades, I mean, centuries ago, millennia ago, that you a lot of times they don't understand it, but it's more of a science book than it is some holy or like mystical secret thing. I mean, it's just the writing style, and yeah, it is coded, but there's a way to read it for children, and there's also a way to read it for adults. So most most adults are still learning it from a child's perspective, or the way a child should learn it.
And a big reason for that is because all of these books that's left out of it. Because then you have to expand your perspective. If you read any of Book of Enoch or any of Gospel of Judas, you know,
Yeah,
you'd have to look at things a bit different. You'll be like, wait, hold on. Let me
yeah.
let me back up. Let me look at this some more.
Because if you think about it, because I mean, all within Christianity, there were like the Gnostics, the Coptics, the I guess you could say the more New Age, but like what most people are learning is, because I mean, even though it's like mixed with paganism and Christianity, I mean, it's really like some people try to make it evil, but paganism was something that where you gave reverence to the different elements of the world of life, the wind, the sun, the rain, the water, the just the atmosphere, the darkness of the skies. I mean, the like, so it can, some people just make it spooky, where it's just really, you just have to have more understanding, or you know once you start to learn how to decode it, it's easier to understand. But Um, hopefully, more people get out of the whole, because when Jesus is talking to you, I mean, it's an aspect. It's not a real person per se, because it could be multiple people. It could be a personality. It's a personality type. You know what I'm saying?
Let me
For
play
the
some
most part.
more. Let me play
Yeah.
some more
Go
of
ahead.
this.
Just for time's sake, I'm going to be skipping a few lines here. When Judas heard this, he said to him, "What good has it done that you've separated me from that generation?" Jesus answered and said, "You'll become the 13th and will be cursed by the other generations and will rule over them. In the last days, they'll blank to you and you won't go up to the holy generation." I could be wrong, but I think that generation here could mean realm or plane of existence. So Judas, like the other disciples, isn't going to go to the holy place in the last days either. Although Jesus says Judas will become or dwell in the 13th realm and rule over the 12 disciples and maybe the realm of humanity in general.
I think that's what it's saying. And then it's like, what do they say? Also, this is another line that everybody will remember. It's like the devil has his reign for 2,000 years or something like that. Like he's supposed to rule for 2,000 years. So, like, well, and is it gonna be when you say 2,000 years? Is it exactly 2,000 years? Like, what? Whose scale are we using for those 2,000 years? And if the, you know when is that time? When does it end? Did it end already? Was it in our past?
Next, Jesus tells Judas about cosmology, and it gets crazy. It's actually such a long and complex description of reality and the origin of the cosmos that I'm going to whittle it down to just a couple of necessary details. Read this on your own if you'd like to. Jesus said, "Come and I'll teach you about the mysteries that no human will see, because there exists a great and boundless realm whose horizons no angelic generation has seen, in which a great invisible spirit, which no angelic eye has ever seen, no heart has ever comprehended, and it's never been called by any name." So there's a realm that not even angels have seen, where there's a great spirit which mankind doesn't even know about. That's not the Christian God. Is the Great Spirit greater than the Christian God? If we keep reading, we find the surprising answer to that question. I'll summarize because this section is long and pretty confusing. The Great Spirit creates several great angels who create angels and powerful beings of their own. Eventually, after dozens of powerful beings come into existence, something totally shocking happens. And look, from the cloud there appeared an angel whose face flashed with fire and whose likeness was defiled by blood. His name was Nebro, which means rebel. Others called him Yaldabaoth. And another angel, Saklos, came from the cloud too. So Nebro created 6 angels, and Saklos did too, to be assistants. They brought out 12 angels in the heavens, with each of them receiving a portion in the heavens. Then Saklos said to his angels, "Let's create a human being after the likeness and the image." And they fashioned Adam and his wife Eve. Yeah, Saklos, this being that's definitely not the most powerful being in the cosmos, is the creator of mankind and the God of Christians and Jews.
Ding, 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 ding. What's up, Pat? I'm really trying to be careful. I really hope people can hear this.
Well, I try not to be too graphic, but I think that there's is an error because like the 2,000 years is more. The calculations is more like 266 years or 260 2667, give or take. So estimated because it's like an eon that they calculate, and of course it's based on the breakdown of the what you call the processions of the equinoxes or whatever. Um they when you calculate the 144,000, like that's out of the 12, the house of 12, you divide it by this and that, and like I mean it really breaks down to that 2667, I think it is. So it's all math. Like this is like math and science that's going on right here. So that's the thing. Like if you try to pin it too closely to actual life, because I mean it is a aspect of life, but if you try to put it to a story where it lines directly up with you know, it, any of their lives that we're discussing now, it's just, you're just not gonna get it. I mean,
Yeah, but
you
I
gotta.
think that especially this last line really pertains to the real world in a literal kind of way. If you can hear it, let me play this again. This last part.
Yeah, Saklos, this being that's definitely not the most powerful being in the cosmos, is the creator of mankind and the god of Christians and Jews. He also came from the same cloud as a being called a rebel, and his name, Saklos, scholars actually say means fool. Suddenly,
You're following the fool.
It's breaking up.
every
It's breaking up for you. You sound clear to me.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know, but I'm just saying, as far like me being able to respond to it is gonna be hard because I can't really understand what he's saying, and I don't have that book. But at the same time, you know, like I don't see, I can't see it literal at all. Even though they're talking about, because I mean, the beginning of humans, I don't think began just like this. We're talking about something that's being written within the last few thousands of years, and you
But
know,
it still makes sense if you think about it properly.
well, I mean,
Yeah. So
the
these
entire
people,
Bible, the entire Bible was written so that it would last throughout the ages. Like anything that happens today, last week, next year, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, like it will always be relatable to, because it is a book of life. Things that humans are going to go to is like the the energies of the universe turn and turn and turn, like they revisit us every, whoever's here during those times that those energies are in the world, we are going to experience those types of that energy. So that's why the book of, the Bible, like people get so, oh yeah, like these what do you call, when these predictions of what's to come is, yeah, because it's been seen millions of times already. You know what I'm saying? Like this people have left the stories behind over thousands of years, and it's not something that's gonna ever stop because I mean, we're all held up to the energies of the universe. So I
yeah.
mean,
Deuce is quiet,
I
man.
just
Did
I
we
mean,
we scared Deuce out of the conversation, man? We didn't Deuce and exited the chat. Let me play some more of this.
everything just makes
well, he's in a
sense.
different
Jesus
situation than
laughs at the
usual.
disciples at the
So
beginning because they're worshiping the foolish god Saklas. He says they're going to lead people astray in his name because the disciples think Jesus is the son of their god, but he's not. He's from the realm of Barbalo, a place far beyond the realm of Saklas. The god of the world is Jesus' enemy. Saklas delights in debauchery and violence, which is why he commands bloody sacrifices. Honestly, from a non-Christian's perspective, I have to say that this makes all the evil and suffering in the world make a lot more sense. God allows suffering, he commands holy wars, and he demands sacrifices because he's just a heartless fool who enjoys violence. Jesus has nothing to do with this God in this text and is on earth in opposition of him. Finally, we come to the end of the story where Judas' so-called betrayal of Jesus takes on a different meaning. Then Judas said to Jesus, "What will those do who've been baptized in your name?" Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, this baptism which they've received in my name will destroy the whole generation of the earthly Adam. Tomorrow they'll torture the one who bears me. Truly I say to you, no hand of a mortal human will fall upon me. Truly I say to you, Judas, those who offer sacrifices to Saklos blank everything that's evil. But you'll do more than all of them because you will sacrifice the human who bears me."
Mm.
Immediately there was a disturbance among the Jews. Their high priest grumbled because he'd gone into the guest room to pray, but some scribes were there watching closely so they could arrest him during his prayer because they were afraid of the people since they all regarded him as a prophet. And they approached Judas and said to him, "What are you doing here? Aren't you Jesus' disciple?" Then he answered them as they wished. Then Judas received some money and handed him over to them. So Judas appears to betray Jesus, but is it really a betrayal? Jesus knew it would happen and he allowed it. So was it part of his plan to oppose Socklaus? What does Jesus mean when he tells Judas, but you'll do more than all of them because you'll sacrifice the human who bears me? There is a lot of negative rhetoric toward the flesh, humans, and mortals in this text, so maybe Jesus saw being separated from his human body as a good thing somehow. I think we could better tell if Jesus thought well of Judas and
He said maybe Jesus thought separation from his physical body was a good thing.
his betrayal, if we could figure out if Judas' fate as a ruler within the 13th realm is a reward or a punishment. Here's my final insight into this story. Remember back when I read this? And look, from the cloud there appeared an angel whose face flashed with fire and whose likeness was defiled by blood. His name was Nebro, which means rebel. Others called him Yaldabaoth. And another angel, Socklaus, came from the cloud too. So Nebro created 6 angels, and Socklaus did too, to be assistants. They brought out 12 angels in the heavens, with each of them receiving a portion in the heavens. This is the dividing of Socklaus and Nebro's portion of the heavens into 12 realms over which they rule. So does that mean the 13th generation or realm where Judas will be sent is the realm of Socklaus and Nebro? The realm of the foolish, terrible god and his double, the devilish, rebellious god of flame and blood? If it is Judas in for the worst damnation of all the disciples, or is he to ascend to godhood himself? Does the secret knowledge which Judas now possesses allow him to become something greater, or is it just a curse? I don't know, and I think that's a question for scholars of texts like these. If you'd like to read this gospel for yourself, and I recommend you do, there's a link to the translation I use in the description. I won't make many claims about what this text teaches us about Christianity as a whole or anything, because I'm not a scholar of religious studies. I will, however, make a few points that I think I, a layperson, am still qualified enough to make. 1. This text shows us that Christianity was not united in its theology immediately following its inception. We often hear that this denomination or that denomination is closer to the early church than any others. But to that I say, which early church? There was never a single theology from which all Christian sects sprung and splintered off of. Christianity was diverse from the very beginning, and the only reason we think otherwise is encapsulated in my next point. History is written by the winners. For a long time, the only things we knew about the Gospel of Judas and those who believed it came from people like Irenaeus, who opposed them. Is it any wonder that we've had less trouble finding the texts that those like Irenaeus upheld and more trouble finding those they despised? It's because by might, popularity, luck, or some combination thereof, those who upheld the texts we've always had won. They gained power, so they wrote the history we learn in our religious Bible classes. Imagine how much richer a history we'd have if all Christian sects were able to record their perspectives too. Finally, here's my obligatory point as an atheist and skeptic. Given that from so early on in Christian history, theology and practice was so varied and divided, the idea that God has made his message clear is just absurd. As early as the 2nd century, Christians already disagreed on the fundamental points. Who is God? Who is Jesus? How do we worship? Is there an afterlife? What is the afterlife like? Those were all points of disagreement among Christians long before any contemporary Christian sects took shape. It doesn't seem like God cared to make things very clear, so what was the point of sending Jesus at all? It's apparent to me, at least, that God probably didn't have anything to do with the genesis of Christianity at all. I hope you all enjoyed listening to this story as much as I've enjoyed.
Yeah, I think you did a good job, buddy. I enjoyed your content. What do y'all think? Somebody made a comment right here. Let me read it. It says, damn, these folks are going to have a hard time with the James Webb Telescope images and realizing that the Bible being written in a minuscule time in the grand scheme of billions of years of the universe being formed and expanded and absorbed. How could an educated individual believe our world, which is a speck of dust in the grand scheme of things, is controlled by a God that needs to be worshipped? Dun, dun, dun. I approve this message. Uh, Pat says the esoteric teachings of the Bible will give you much higher understanding of the sciences. So let me read some more comments underneath this video because the ones I read earlier were good. So I'm sure there's some more. Let me find where I stopped. Lilith. I don't think I read this one. Let me read this one. It says, really appreciate this carefully researched and presented analysis. Personally, I studied apocryphal Jewish and Christian, or at least Christian adjacent, literature in high school, college, and grad school. And in my cases, I didn't kill my faith. In fact, I found it strengthening in that it helped to challenge me and lead me to growth. Rather than kill faith, engaging learning without fear or avoidance can lead to a deeper, more authentic faith. It's challenging but worthwhile. And I think it's perfectly fine and good if a person lands on atheism, whether permanent or traditional and temporary. Keep learning and exploring, friends. I condone that message too, man. It's totally okay to be a religious person. You know what I'm saying? But this person said that they went on and continued to study more and more on it all. Like, and it didn't shake their faith. They still believe, and that's totally okay. That's totally all right. I bet you they have a way better understanding than the average person that's freaking just reading the same passages out of the Bible every day. Let me read another comment. It says, when I turned 13, I decided that I didn't believe or interpret Christian teachings the same way my parents, or most of my family for that matter, believed and interpreted them. I decided to look into all religions I knew of, learn of new ones, dig into everything I could, and find what made sense to me. I found my own joy. I don't force it on others. I explain my point of view if people ask for it, and I refuse to limit my knowledge. I passed that view on to my own kids. I told them to look into and question everything. And if it doesn't make sense or feel right to them and my friends and family that look at me like a heretic or some crazy woman, they could not have truly loved me to begin with if they were willing to cut me out of their lives for the crime of thought and choice. Not to mention, my biggest issue with traditional Christianity amongst my family and home state is their inclination to cut people by their family, friend, loved one, etc., out of their lives entirely if they somehow conflict with that faith. If you believe someone may go to hell for being gay, as told by your faith, then why the hell, pun intended, would you not want to help them? Don't get me wrong, thumpers are annoying to the extreme, but I would still prefer have a thumper pestering me out of love and concern to save me from hell than being cut out of their life for being a flawed human being. Man, that's a touching comment right there. And the journey that this person is saying they went on, I went on a similar journey because, you know, my dad was Muslim, my mom's Christian, and I kind of grew up in a split kind of thing. And then it's like my views grew on both of them. So, but then as I became an adult, or even before I became an adult, before I became an adult, because I was super into religion. And that's kind of why I do the anthropology stuff, because that's kind of the same stuff. But um, I started studying a bunch of other religions too and comparing them. That's exactly what I did. Let me read some more comments. It says, the Forbidden Gospels and the Book of Enoch are incredible books. Definitely a need to check a lot of books. The Catholic Church has tried to hide so much. It's a joke. Also, if you really want to hear a musical version, the band Lord of the Lost have written an album called Judas. Bloody brilliant, this guy says. Another comment. All of my most frustrating childhood memories are about times when I would ask a grown-up some kind of question about reality and got a cooped-out dummy designed to hide the truth instead of an honest answer. This nightmare of lies continued until I was finally able to get access to the internet, went online and searched for those answers, but sadly, I was a grown-up myself already when that happened. Man, how many of us went through that? And I'll be talking about that. Why do we lie to our kids about everything anyways? Like, that's so freaking retarded. You know, we putting them, behind already off the top. And like he said, ask the questions. I used to ask questions a lot when I was a little kid. And it's like, that's what led me on my journey. Um, Pat says, love that last comment. He says, metaphysics is a religion that gave clarity and calmness since I could finally get true understanding. Because I think it's the same thing, man. And I think that Pat understands that, because once you really start going into like metaphysics, or if you go into anything, you're looking at God, you're looking at the universe. That's really what it is. Anything that you look at in detail is going to be God, the universe. So the macro versus the micro, like, so when you go really deep and start looking at it internally, so like you can look at atom, and then look at like the parts that make up the atom, and it's gonna look like a solar system. Is what it's gonna look like. And that's what it is, man. It's like the macro and the micro, you know little solar systems inside. What is it? As above, so below. As within, so without. So that's what I mean by, if you really go into details of the metaphysics, if you really go into details about like the stars, then you're looking at, you're going to be looking at spirituality, because it's one
Gotcha.
and the same, really. You there, Deuce? You want to make comments? I've been talking a lot. My mouth dry as hell.
Nah, I'm here, bro. Like, uh, yeah, this kind. I ain't gonna lie. This is kind of outside of my realm. Like, in all honesty.
Yeah, I figured you got real quiet and she like, Deuce has exited the chat.
Yeah, man. I mean, I never really got into religion real heavily, bro. Like, I'll just be honest with you. Never really got into it real heavily beyond, going to church, as a kid, pretty much being forced to go. But I never really got into it. Like, I don't really know much about it. I never studied it, any of that.
My green scheme is not showing that good, but hopefully y'all can see. It's a lot of symbolism in this right here. I'm sure Pat can see him. It's like the crown around his head, and you see like it's like light rays are coming out, and then it's orange behind his head. It's like a circle there, and then of course
I
you got
got
the cross in the back, and then he's like, supposedly this is a death machine. He's dying. He's dying on the cross, and then you've got the two sides on one side of him. It looks like maybe the sun, and then on the other side it looks like the moon. And I cut off the top of this, but if you can look, if these little shapes up here kind of look like the egg of life, if you can see the top of it, but I cut it off. And then at
you.
the
Yeah.
bottom, you have the man and the woman. Is that what it is? I can't freaking see. I think it's the man and the woman. And one has like, it's like comparing to the moon, and the other one's comparing to the sun. I think because it's like the yellow versus the red. Shit, I wish I could see that better. But yeah, so the thing is, all of this symbolism here, you can learn from this. Remember, we want you to be an activist, and don't take our word for it. Look that shit up. Pulley.